بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The game plan for today, we'll review the 5 names of the Quran that we went over last week, and then we'll go over a description of the Quran by the Quran. There are several sifat, there are several descriptions of the Quran. Remember, descriptions differ than names. According to majority of the scholars of the Quran, there is a difference between names of the Quran and a description of the Quran and the characteristics of the Quran. Let's begin, inshallah. I do have to give a disclaimer. In today's class, there will be a portion of the class where we will discuss the divine purpose of marriage. So use your best judgment if you want your kids to listen to that portion of the class today. So let's begin. The most common name of the Quran. So there were 5 descriptions of the Quran that we went over last week. Does anyone remember any of those 5? Please put it on the Zoom webinar chat. What were the 5 names of the Quran? Not descriptions. What were the 5 names of the Quran that we went over last week? Who remembers the 5 names of the Quran? Yes, you are correct. One is Tanzeel. There's 4 more. Lawh Mahfuz would be a description. Thank you for sharing that. Al-Quran, right? The most common name is Al-Quran. Number 3, Al-Kitab. Very good. 2 more. Al-Furqan. And 1 more. Quran and Majid is a description. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. But that was a description. Al-Haq is also a description. Very good. Al-Dhikr. Yes. Al-Dhikr. That was the 5th and final name of the Quran. Very good. So Al-Quran, it comes from qara'a yaqra'u, to recite. So it means that which is recited often. So the recitation. So the meaning tells us we need to recite the Quran often. It's mentioned 73 times in the Quran. And if you even say, even if you read a half a page today, you can say, I have read the Quran. So you can use this to say you have read the Quran, even if you just read part of it. Muslims believe the meaning, the language, every word and every letter of the Quran, its sound when it's recited, and the text it's written upon, those are all considered the Quran. And we know the Quran is the constant companion of Muslims in the journey of life. When we're born, the Quran is recited. When we get married, it's recited. And at our passing, inshallah, it will be recited by our loved ones. The second name of the Quran is Al-Kitab, the book. The book. Why was the Quran called Al-Kitab, a book, before it was even a book? Why did Allah say, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, that is a book, even though the Quran was not a book at that time? The Quran was just scattered in loose fragments at that time. Why did it say it was the Quran? Well, it could be that this ayah indicated to the companions that they needed to compile it into a book. And this is why Umar radiallahu anh recommended Abu Bakr to do this very project. And Abu Bakr started to do the project. Rasulullah ﷺ was the instrument through which the reality of the Quran, which existed with Allah on a level of reality beyond time in the Lawh Mahfuz, was revealed to men and women in this world. Thus, the Quran was not created. It is and it was eternal. And we'll talk more about this when the topic of compilation of the Quran comes up. Another name of Quran is Tanzeel. The Quran was a reality before it was revealed. It was then descended to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tanzeel. This is proof that the Quran is not the words of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Quran was already a reality before it was revealed. Another name of the Quran is Al-Furqan. Al-Furqan. It is usually translated as the criterion. I like the definition of the divide. The divide. وَآتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ وَالْفُرْقَانِ. It is the division, the barrier between truth and falsehood. It is the divide from the believers and the disbelievers. Al-Furqan. And Al-Dhikr. This is the fifth name of the Quran. The Quran is a dhikr, a reminder of the purpose of our creation, a reminder of the history of the past nations, and a reminder of ethics and morals which we often forget to sometimes implement. Al-insan, it comes from uns, which means to be friendly. That's why, mashallah, majority of the human beings that you will meet, inshallah, they have an innate nature that they will be friendly. But al-insan also comes from nasiya yansa, which means to forget. And that is why the Quran is there as a dhikr, as a reminder of the purpose of our creation. It's very easy to forget and go put your brain on autopilot. It's easy to forget about the stories of the past nations, and it's easy to forget simple ethics and morals. So now we have gone over the 5 names of the Quran. Let us now go over a description of the Quran by the Quran. We will go over 4 descriptions today. Please try to remember these 4 descriptions. The first description that we will go over, Burhan. Everyone say Burhan. Burhan means an irrefutable argument, something you cannot argue with. Burhan. Ya ayyuhan nas, Allah says, O people, qad ja'atkum burhanum, a convincing proof, a irrefutable argument has come to you, i.e. the Quran. The Quran is an argument which you cannot refute. I was reading a book, pretty good book on leadership, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. But I disagree with it's by Maxwell. I disagree with the author's choices of words. Yes, the book is good. I have a few copies if anyone wants. I gave a few copies to the youth on their birthdays or on different occasions. But to say that something is irrefutable, that is where I will disagree with the author. Because the only thing that is irrefutable is Allah and the Quran. So that book is not Burhan, even though he's claiming for it to be a Burhan. But other than that, there's also a few issues that I have inside the book, but some of those laws are definitely applicable if you want to learn leadership. Burhan, according to Raghib Asfahani, he writes in Al-Mufradat fi Gharib al-Quran, which is a dictionary of the words that are mentioned in the Quran. He says, Burhan means bayanun lil hujjah, speech that is indicating towards evidence. Evidence. Burhan, another name for Burhan is evidence. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Al-Qur'anu hujjatul laka. The Quran is a evidence for you or against you. So that's another name for the Quran. Another name of the Quran, I'm sorry, not name, a sifat, a characteristic. And I'll mention 2 here, 2 and 3. Nur and Mubin. These 2 characteristics mentioned here, they go together. That's why I put them here together. They're mentioned together in the Quran. I said I don't want to separate what Allah did not separate. So you all remember the covenant that we took with Allah, right? Who remembers the covenant that we took with Allah? What was that one question that Allah asked us? Let me open up the... Who remembers that question Allah asks us? It was a covenant, a pact. I'll say the Arabic, maybe you'll get it. Alastu bi rabbikum. Okay, so this is why it's good to have a reminder. Oh, someone wrote, looks like someone wrote. Here. Yes, very good. Who is your Rabb? Very good. Who is your Rabb? You are correct. So Allah says, Nuran Mubina, the Quran is a clear light. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ نُورًا مُبِينًا. We sent upon you a clear light. This clear light enables you, this Quran, i.e., enables you to understand the importance of the covenant that you all took with Allah, to be faithful to that covenant. Allah says, the hadith is in Musnad of Imam Ahmad, Ubay ibn Ka'b is the narrator. Allah created all of humanity whom He intended to create until the last day comes into existence. And on that day, Allah gave us life. He gave us consciousness and He gave us faculty of speech. And Allah asked, am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum. Am I not your Lord? And we all said, qalu bala. Yes, absolutely. Then Jibreel alayhi salam, then Allah said to us, I will call upon the sky and the earth, and I will call upon your father, Adam alayhi salam, to bear witness against you if you say on the day of judgment that you were ignorant. So don't ascribe a partner to me, and I will send you my messengers who will remind you of this covenant. And then we all said, Shahidna an taqulu yawm al-qiyamati inna kunna an hada ghafilin. This is in Surah 7, Ayah 172. If you are interested more in this conversation, read the tafsir in Surah number 7, Ayah 172. And that is why, my respected brothers and sisters, we have an imprint. We have an imprint of worshiping Allah on our souls. That is why worshiping Allah is innate in our human nature. The second reason why this clear light, it is defined as the Quran, it will enable you to understand the truth about the prophets. The Quran makes it clear that the prophets are role models. We need prophets. The Quran is clear on this. So it's a nuram mubina. And the last and fourth sifat that I will discuss, the Quran is a maw'idah. Maw'idah, a good advice. Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, qad ja'atkum maw'idatum min rabbikum. There has come to you good advice from your Lord. From this ayah, we understand that there is a difference between good advice and bad advice. Here are some examples of bad advice that I have received in my life. And after I have shared this, maybe if you, go ahead and put on the Zoom webinar, what are some examples of bad advice that you have received in your life? So I'll give you a chance to write, just think about that right now. But here are some examples of bad advice that I have received. Number one, be a man, don't cry. Right? No, let me just yeah, be a man, don't cry. If being a man means that you don't cry, then what does that say about the manhood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried on numerous occasions. One of the etiquettes of making dua is to cry. Right? One of the 7 people who will be shaded on the day of judgment, where there is no shade except for his shade, a person who remembers Allah when they are alone, فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَا, and the tears are rolling down. How can you not cry when you lose a loved one? How can you not cry when you see the racial injustice going around in the world? How can you not cry when you know that there are thousands of people locked up in jail and they are innocent? How can that make you not cry? So this is not natural. When we tell people, be a man, don't cry, suppress your emotions, this is not natural. This is not Islamic. The second bad advice that I heard, and this was advice I heard today from a sister. She said, Imam, a friend of mine is getting married soon. Her fiance wants to have intimacy since they are getting married anyway, but she doesn't want to engage in any actions before her nikah. What advice can I give her? And I said to her, sister, this is exactly why attending a premarital counseling session with a practicing Muslim counselor, this is why it's so important. Or attending a premarital counseling session with an Imam who understands psychology, why this is so important. If intimacy is a way to release tension, if intimacy is viewed to experience a moment of pleasure, then they are not going to reach its designed purpose. Eventually, that act will become an act of selfishness, and it will become mundane, especially after marriage, because they have already performed that act before marriage, and thus they have lost the barakah. In Islam, intimacy is much more than that. In Islam, that act is the union of body, mind, and soul. And that is why people of faith reserve that act for after marriage. That act was designed to be a unique bonding experience that unites a husband and a wife in a lifelong intimate relationship with Allah at the center of their relationship. Allah was the center of their relationship, not their carnal desires. When we view intimacy in this manner, then it becomes a true act of love that is expressed in the deepest possible way of their commitment to each other. Not only that, they will also have barakah, and they will get rewarded for performing that act if it is done after marriage. So my advice to that sister was, learn the divine purpose of intimacy. Another bad advice that I heard, and I keep hearing, this person must be correct. He has so many followers. Going back to one of the names of the Quran, it is maw'idah, good advice. So sometimes a popular person will give advice, but it will not be good advice. Many lifestyle influencers are giving advice to our kids while nothing is known about their background. Nothing is known if they are legitimate or not. And they depict a life of success and happiness. And they say to you and I, they say, you can also be successful and happy if you love yourself. All you need to do is to love yourself and to be you. That's what they say. Be you and do what makes you happy. And then this self-love transforms into self-worship. They're saying they are simply loving themselves. But Allah says, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى. Have you seen the one who has taken his desires as his or her own God? And these influencers, their values are getting viral. For them, their values are getting viral. They will do what it takes to get viral. So my advice to those brothers and sisters, especially to those minds which are impressionable, the young minds out there that are listening, if you want to receive good advice online, you have to start with a trusted source. You have to start with someone whose values are in line with the Quran and Sunnah. And unfortunately, there are many Muslim women out there who are being influenced by these ex-hijabi influencers. Now, I don't want to bash on them too much because they have done good. These people, these three sisters, and including more, they have motivated converts on and those people who have never worn the hijab and how to wear the hijab, and they taught them how to dress modestly. But now there is a different trend out there, and these ex-hijabi influencers, they determine what is cool, and they decided that it's cooler to love yourself. And they are very aware that their actions and their choices influence their viewers. That is why companies are willing to pay thousands of dollars to get them to use their products. Some of their videos were never trending on YouTube, but once they made a video which stated, "I am now taking off my hijab," suddenly that video is trending on YouTube. These are things, brothers and sisters, you have to think about. When these hijabi YouTubers take off their hijab, you can be sure that the ones who are paying them to do this, they want you to do the same as well. Another tip I have to give, because we're talking about advice and bad advice, if you are a parent and you allow your kids to have a cell phone and you allow your kids to be on social media, you have to do yourself a favor and take a close look at the apps that they are using. One app that is very popular and extremely detrimental to their iman is TikTok. TikTok. As a parent, you may think, oh, this is just some harmless dancing videos and music clips. But what you don't realize is that these people are using their data for remarketing their videos to your kids. And the terms of service allow kids as young as 13 to have accounts. What does that mean? It means that your kids will be involved, will be exposed to things that are not just illegal, but they are completely impermissible in Islam. Most of the music clips and the dances that are found and that are promoted on TikTok are such a sexually explicit nature that just a few years ago, those dances that were found on this app, they would just be found on strip clubs. But now they're being found on TikTok, and it's being normalized to our kids in the name of fun, in the name of having a good laugh. If you don't believe me, that's okay. Do your own research. Find out the top 10 most popular songs on TikTok. Go and type in on Google, and then type in the names of those songs, and then type in the word lyrics and read for yourself what they are saying on this app. When people offer you a free product, remember it's never free. You are their commodity. Another bad advice that I hear many people say is follow your passion. Follow your passion. Sometimes people, they're trying to follow their passion and then they realize, I never had a passion. So more appropriate advice would be to develop your passion. Develop your passion, not follow your passion. Okay. Another advice, you're so young, you've got all the time in the world. Yes, you should enjoy your 20s, you should enjoy when you're a teenager, and this is the time where you can make mistakes without huge ramifications. But remember, the more you wander around, the more you waste time, the longer it will take to eventually get on track. Very pleasing for myself to know that there will be at least 4 to 5 brothers and sisters from our community that are in their early 20s they are putting their life on track and they are getting married, mashallah, in the summer. This is something that's really pleasing for me to hear. They realize, these youth of IFM, and you got to give the parents a lot of credit, because they are involved in their kids' lives, and they have a relationship with their kids, and they realize that yes, you got to enjoy your youth, but don't let your youth to be an excuse to procrastinate. As one of the 7 people that are guaranteed paradise, the youngster who spends his youth worshiping Allah. Another bad advice is, sometimes people say, never allow your emotions to be on display when you're at work. When you're dealing with people, there will definitely be emotions, but the key is to know when to show your emotions. More appropriate to say is, know when to show your emotions. You don't want to be yelling at someone in front of everyone. But if you want to talk to someone and you want to say, hey, I'm nervous about this new project, I've never done this before, you shouldn't have to suppress your emotions. You don't have to have this fake confidence all the time. And don't say no. Well, many people hate saying no, especially to their boss. But sometimes you have to say no. You have to say no because you have to establish your boundaries and your position. And this commands far more respect than saying yes to everything. You don't want to be a yes man. So the point I'm trying to make is, there's a lot of bad advice that is out there. The Quran is maw'idah. It's a good advice. Feel free to type on the chat, what is the worst advice anyone has ever given you? Does anyone want to share? Question about intimacy before nikah is zina. You're right. So intimacy meaning intercourse, yes, it is zina. Okay, if there's no one wants to share, that's okay. And feel free to share at the end as well, brothers and sisters, if there's any advice that you felt, it's not appropriate at that time. Do as you wish. You're right. Good, but that's good job, Brother Arshad. Like, do as you wish. That's not great advice. Okay. So 5 traits of bad advice. Allah says, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Sometimes people give advice and they're not even qualified. Number 2, sometimes people give advice and that advice is not even tailored towards you. It has no context. The person is just speaking based upon his own experience. And your experience is totally different. Number 3, the person does a lot of talking but doesn't do enough listening. The people who give the best advice, they always ask clarification questions. Then they advise. They do a lot of listening and then they advise. Number 4, people who give bad advice, they're usually emotionally charged. No, you shouldn't marry this person. Why? Because I don't like this person. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that from someone else. Right? If you know about a person and someone else is asking that person, is he a good person or not? Try to keep your emotions out of it. And last, if the advice ruffles your instincts. And I'll share one last story, and then we'll continue inshallah next week. I was at IFS in Villa Park as a teacher for 3.5 years. Then I heard about this Imam position. So I gave the khutbah here. Then I was asked if I was interested in the Imam position. And of course, at first I didn't want to. I'm not a huge proponent of change. But I said I might as well take the interview. After the interview, I was offered a contract here. I talked with my parents about it. Both of my parents advised against it. Then I asked why. They said they didn't want me to move 45 minutes away from where they live, because up until that time, I lived with my parents. My teachers advised not to take the Imam position. So I asked why. They said politics. I said, explain politics. He said, you'll find out once you experience it. I said, okay. Right? And then they also said, you got a good thing going on at IFS. You like teaching, you're good at teaching. Why do you want to leave something that you enjoy? I said, yeah, it makes sense. So I usually do 3 things before I make a major decision. Ask my family members, ask my teachers. Those were 2, and they both said no. And the 3rd thing I do is do Salatul Istikhara. So I prayed Salatul Istikhara, and Salatul Istikhara is a special type of prayer. When you need guidance, you do this prayer. And this was the first time in my life that Salatul Istikhara conflicted with what my teachers and what my parents were saying. So the advice that my teachers and what my parents were saying, it conflicted with my, you can say, my gut. Usually they're in sync. In terms of marriage, it was in sync. In terms of what to study in college, it was in sync. In terms of whether or not to study at the madrasa, it was in sync. But this time, it was not in sync. So the advice that my parents and teachers were giving me, it was ruffling my instincts. I basically made the decision that if I really wanted to grow and make an impact, I wanted to go outside of my comfort zone. And so I did. Here I am today in front of you. Definitely has not been easy. And I wouldn't say that the advice that my parents and teachers gave was bad. I wouldn't say it was bad, but because I understand their point of view. They were saying this from a position of love. But I would say if there is conflict between the advice of people you trust versus Salatul Istikhara, then sometimes you will have to go with what Salatul Istikhara and what your instincts tell you. Okay, so next week, inshallah, we will discuss good advice, maw'idah. What are the traits of maw'idah? Why was the Quran called a maw'idah? Any questions or comments before we close? You are correct. Salatul Istikhara, how do you know where Salatul Istikhara is directing you? It's very hard. This is why you need to go to a dream expert. Not all scholars are dream experts. And not all doctors are trustworthy. Right? Likewise, not all spiritual guides are trustworthy. So if you find a spiritual guide who knows the science of dream interpretation, and they can explain that dream to a scholar who is a dream expert, they will be able to ask you questions and help you achieve your answer, because you want someone to interpret it properly. So usually you'll get a feeling in the heart that this is the decision I want to do, but sometimes you won't get that feeling, and that is when you'll need the help of the dream expert. I did not have, so in regards to my job as an Imam, I did not have a dream. I just felt like I wanted to grow out of being a teacher. I love kids, I still love teaching, but I didn't want to deal just with the youth. I wanted to deal with the adults as well. I wanted to be able to perform janazas and wash the body of the deceased and make a bigger impact. You know, because I would teach the fiqh of janaza. I would teach the fiqh of washing the body of the deceased to my students. But now if I teach it again, because when I was a teacher, I never washed the body of the deceased. And this is, I would say, one of the blessings of me being an imam. I'll just share one last, one story. When my brothers, when we were washing the body of my dad, all of them were froze in the beginning because they never washed the body of the deceased. My two younger brothers, they're more intellectual than me. They're much more smarter than me. They're a better leader than me. But they froze when they were washing the body of the deceased. But when they saw me, you know, saying the adhkar and telling, hey, this is what you got to do here now, and you got to do this now, that helped. That helped them. So experience is something that is extremely, extremely valuable. Yes, reading about it in books is important as well. But that's why they say, is'al al-mujarrib wa la tas'al al-hakim. Don't always ask the one who is knowledgeable, but ask the one who is knowledgeable and experienced. You're right, brother Irtaza. You said all professional positions come with more. Yes, but when I was a teacher, alhamdulillah, especially at IFS, they were able to put politics to the side. So I just was able to focus on the kids, alhamdulillah. Yeah, so they had really good leadership over there as well. Okay. Where is the word mu'aydah mentioned in the Quran? Okay, I'll show it here. Mu'aydah, yes. Chapter 4, ayah 174. Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'atkum maw'idah. 4:174. Okay. Hope you all have a great day. See you all inshallah next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. So we can conclude the program. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.